Hey Cozie Homies! Welcome back to the zone. Today, we are going to do an episode of the Cozy Close-Up where I'll be talking to all of you about my love for museum exhibitions. So yeah, I know it's been a long time since we have done episode like this, in this setting, in this room, and really the Cozy Close-Up vibes lah. It's been quite long since I've done it. And today, I just want to share with all of you something that I've really enjoyed ever since I was a young boy. So. One thing about me is that I like to go to museums, and I think many of you have known that. And yeah, many people asked me before, like, oh, what's so interesting about museums? Like, isn't it all of them just paintings and historical artifacts? Like, what's so interesting and engaging about it? Sometimes I feel like I don't really know the answer there, because for me personally, I learn so much and I get very inspired when I see these great works of art, history, and like science. And for today's episode, I'll just be sharing with all of you some of my favorite museum exhibitions of all time, and also to let all of you know like what's my thought process behind my museum trips, and to let all of you see like how I process and interpret different works of art. So yeah, I guess this is what we're doing today. Like, I'm not a professional art historian or anything like this, but it'll just be me casually talking about art from a consumer's point of view. Consumer, viewer, appreciator. I don't really know how to term it. So yeah, that's all I'll be talking about. To make this video short and sweet, I'll be sharing with you my top 5 museum exhibitions I've been to. And yeah, the first 3 I'll be sharing will be temporary exhibitions, which means exhibitions that have taken place in the past and will never ever be brought out to light again. And 2 of them will be permanent exhibitions where all of you can still see as long as you live in Singapore, and I think it'll be ongoing for forever basically. Okay, to kickstart this mini presentation, I will share with all of you the most life-changing museum exhibition I've ever been to. And that will be Guo Pei Chinese Art and Couture that is in Asian Civilizations Museum back in 2019. For me personally, I love fashion a lot. I am very interested in haute couture, high fashion, and basically artistic approaches to fashion designing. Like, I'm very into things like this. And yeah, Guo Pei has been one of my favorite fashion designers like for a really long period of time. I really admire her works. I really love her creativity and how she can incorporate traditional Chinese fashion designing techniques, sewing techniques, embroidery into a modern day look, a modern day dress. And I think she has this magical approach when it comes to designing outfits like this. Personally, I think this exhibition is really interesting because they exhibited ancient traditional historical artifacts alongside with Guo Pei's works. Because it allows us to actually see, right, like what are some of the works that inspired Guo Pei, and we also get to see Guo Pei's own personal interpretation of traditional Chinese history, which I think is a very interesting concept that this museum has put out. And yeah, because Guo Pei's outfits are literally haute couture, high-end fashion, we get to see really expensive $1 million gowns in front of us. And I think it is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You don't get to see $1 million dresses like on a daily basis. So yeah. I guess I'll share with you all some of the very iconic dresses I've seen in this exhibition. First of all, it definitely has to be the one that Rihanna wore at the 2015 Met Gala. So this is the iconic omelette dress. Yeah, and it's really beautiful. We're gonna see it. It's so stunning, and it's just really grand, really big, which I think is a really good way to explain and describe Guo Pei's work to everybody. Because I feel like for her, Guo Pei likes to make outfits that are like, greater than life. She likes to make outfits that are really, out of proportion, really huge, really like supernatural. It gives us like a very like superhuman vibes, when we look at it, which I think is really cool. Like she makes you feel like, when you see this outfit, you feel like you're being transported to a different place in time, to the courts of Imperial China, where like where you get to see the empress and the emperor wearing such luxurious and big and grand gowns. Yeah, these are the vibes that she's like giving us like every time when I look at her outfits. And yeah, because basically right, the museum actually made a mini trailer for this exhibition. So I watched this mini trailer before I actually visited the exhibition. And they interviewed Guo Pei, and Guo Pei said this quote which I think is really interesting. 日戴皇冠必承其重, which means, if you want to bear the crown, you have to be able to bear its weight. Which I think is a really good summary and explanation of her outfits, because her outfits are really heavy, they're really grand, and they represent a lot of historical like significance behind it. And the dress that really exemplified this the best would be the one that Rihanna wore, the omelette dress, because I think, it's really grand, and yellow is the color of royalty. And I remember back in ancient China, they said like how yellow is a forbidden color. Like no one in ancient China can wear yellow unless you're the emperor, which I think is really cool. And Guo Pei transformed this idea by creating outfits in yellow color. And yeah, you think about it, it's also quite ironic because you think about it, only like the rich and wealthy gets to wear this yellow gown. So in a sense, you have to be the emperor or empress of our times to be able to wear this, which I think is a really ironic touch to this entire traditional Chinese mindset that they used to have. Okay, so one of my favorite Guo Pei looks from this exhibition has to be this red outfit. Where it's basically like a floral gown underneath with this rope above it. And I think it's really beautiful because for me, how I interpreted this outfit is actually how, the flowers and the floral motif for the gown at the bottom, right? It kind of for me represents the soft side, the feminine side of like women. It's like, it shows how like gentle and caring and kind-hearted females expected to be back in those times. And even in modern day times, it's to represent the softer side of our humanity. It's like a really nice light touch to this entire outfit. But on top of that, she added this slightly stiffer and more grand kind of like rope above it, which for me personally I think is to represent the strength of women. So many times women have been oppressed in society, because of like how they're deemed to be physically weaker than men, and they're only suitable to do gentler roles, gentler things. I feel like what Guo Pei did here is very powerful, is to let you know that, I am a woman, I can be soft, I can be gentle, but I also can be hard, I can be aggressive, and I am a queen, which I think is a really good approach that she took when she made this dress, because I really love the idea behind it. And the colors are really beautiful, red and gold. So like, for me personally, I really love this contrast in textures, and I just love how this entire look comes together. It shows you both the soft side and the hard side, the yin and the yang. I really love the play in textures for this look. And yeah, another one of my favorite looks from this exhibition would have to be this look, which is basically like a really big royal gown. And it is also really breathtaking and so stunning. Like, when I first saw it for the first time, I was like, whoa, this is really impressive. And yeah, it's really beautiful. I think personally for me, what I like about this outfit is that it is big and grand, but it kind of deviates from how traditional ancient Chinese royal gowns would look like, which I think is really interesting. This for me has a bit more Western influences to it, but it has very traditional Chinese embroidery and materials, and this is why I also like really respect Guo Pei's work, because for me it's like I feel like this look just represents what it means to be a queen, you know. I think it's just another like very characteristic Guo Pei look. It has all the very signature Guo Pei touches to it, like the play in textures again, you know, like there's the fur, there's the diamonds and the embroidery, and just very beautiful. It's just so breathtaking. Yep. And also one thing about why I like to go to museums, right, is that for me I feel like museums nowadays are trying to like stay away from the traditional ideal of what a museum is. So for example, when I say a museum, many people think of like old dusty books and like historical artifacts that are on the brink of like crumbling down and stuff. But for me, right, I feel like now museums are trying to have this more interactive approach when it comes to engaging the audiences and the viewers. For this Guo Pei exhibition, what they did is they created this tiny little studio where you get to like create your own dresses and things like this. So they give us random pieces of cloth and we can just stick it on this mannequin. And yeah, and this is some of the looks I did just for fun, and it's just so fun and engaging and interactive. So yeah, this is also another reason why I like to go to museums, because you can interact with the material, you can be hands-on, and you get to actually, you know, see a lot of the behind the scenes work, see those art pieces in the 3D 360 view, which I think is a really cool visual experience. Okay, so the next museum exhibition I want to talk about would be Minimalism, Space, Light, Object. So this is a collaborative exhibition between National Gallery Singapore as well as Art Science Museum. And this is very interesting because minimalism has always been a very heated topic of debate. Like everyone is talking about whether minimalist art is considered legit because of like the apparent lack of effort, and like, you know, it's deemed to be unsophisticated to some people. For me, I was really looking forward to this because for me, I always love like the arts, and you know, even though I'm not an art student or things like this, but I like to read up on a bit of art history, and you know, get to see all the different genres and styles and trends that art has taken over the course of history. So you know, there's like Renaissance art, Impressionist art, and things like this. And minimalism is a relatively new branch of art, which I think is really cool and interesting because of how they can actually represent very complicated and complex ideas with very simplistic and sometimes oversimplistic display of material, you know, whether be it on a canvas or like an installation, a structure, a statue or whatever, which I think is really cool and interesting. For me, right, I had the honor to go with my group of friends, and if for those who are like Singaporean students, you all know like the PW group, a project work group. So yeah, it is my PW group. We went out after our exam and we get to go to this exhibition together, and we took many beautiful photos together. One of the most impactful artworks I've encountered in this exhibition, right, would be Megadeth by Tatsuo Miyajima. which I think is a really beautiful, and it's a really like stunning piece of work, because it's actually basically a big room, and on this on the walls of the room, right, they kind of have this LED displays of numbers that count down from 9 to 0. Oh, sorry, it doesn't count down from 9 to 0. It counts down from 9 to 1, and it skips 0, and it starts the whole cycle again. And what the artist intended for this to do is to parallel the Buddhist cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and 0 being the void, which I think is really interesting, because you know, like when we enter this big room of like ominous, very dark blue lighting, right, it makes you feel like, oh yeah, like a very insignificant being in this big room, and you see all these numbers counting down, kind of representing the passing of time, and you know, looking at like, oh, death and rebirth, and it's to think about this endless cycle of like karma and reincarnation, and it just makes us wonder, you know, what are we in this greater scheme of things in the universe? You know, this universe is supposedly like this endless, timeless space and time where we all exist in, and we are just its passing visitors, you know, like we come here, we die, and perhaps after we die we go to somewhere else, and this cycle continues. And I think it's a really a good piece of work that allows us to contemplate and think about topics like this. Yeah, and it's just really beautiful. We get to take really nice photos there also, and I just love how it kind of like questions our existence, you know, like when we enter this room, we're like, ooh, we start to doubt everything around us, and we just feel like we are a bit lost, and I really like the feeling that this work has on us. Yeah. Okay, so another exhibit that I like a lot is this piece of work titled Room for One Color by Oliver Ellison. So this is basically a big room, once again, that is in a very pressurizing and very domineering yellow light. So basically this room, right, is illuminated by this yellow light, right, that is so intensely yellow that everything you see is grey, which is really cool because we never ever saw something like this before. So basically I went with my friends and they all look grey, I look grey, and it's just really life-changing. I was like, oh, I never knew I could see the world like this. And this is exactly the intended effect of the artist. And basically the artist wanted to demonstrate, right, that our perception is not fixed but changes with our environment. And it suggests that we can actually see the world from multiple perspectives, which is really interesting. It's like just by changing the color of the lighting, everything that we see is different. It's so interesting how, right, like I think all of us feel a slight sense of discomfort because the color of the lighting is just so intense, and everything we see is so grey. It's just kind of like how it just takes away the everyday color we see on each other's faces, our outfits. It takes away all the color of it, and we just feel at a loss. Like we feel really empty, and it just feels so pressurizing, which I think is it's like a bodily sensation that I never knew I would have felt. And this room really made me feel things. Yeah. Okay, so another one of the works that I personally enjoy a lot. I have no idea who's the artist and what's the name of this work because I didn't manage to take a photo of the description. But this is all based on my own memory, but based on what I recall, right, this is a piece of work that is made out of steel, if I recall correctly, or a piece of metal. So basically there's a sheet of metal over here, and they place this metal rod lying over here. And the interesting thing is that they didn't use any adhesives, so it's all entirely just based on like center of gravity and like how they position it to keep it in place. So even though it looks like a very simple piece of work, right, I was like really shocked and surprised by this work because of how, like, you know, they didn't use anything to stick these pieces together, and they only let it like lean on each other, which I think is like, it creates this sense of suspense and anxiety because, like, you know, maybe if we move too hard or we accidentally bump into this work, the entire piece of work will collapse, which I think is the intended effect of the artist, because it's to let us know like all of us kind of like revere and like we respect artworks, you know, like we view artworks from a distance and things like this, and they're always so well protected and they're like well preserved, right, like, you know, like iconic paintings like the Mona Lisa or Starry Night, like they're all professionally treated and they're all like protected from light, protected from any sort of damage. But for this work, right, it's literally left in the open and it's so vulnerable to just being like destroyed just like this, which I think is really interesting because, like, yeah, because for me I feel like this is a very delicate piece of work and like we view it from a distance, and I was like, ooh, this is actually really scary. Yeah, which I think is something that minimalism actually tries to offer, you know, like it gives you an experience, it gives you it lets you feel primitive human emotions without showing you much. It's just a very simple concept that can invoke strong feelings in you, which I think is something that minimalism as an art form, it gets to create this effect on us. And I really love this entire concept. So yeah, I feel like this entire exhibition was done really well. It kind of like allows us to see different interpretations of minimalism, how different artists in this field of art get to demonstrate and present their works. And it's just very interactive and engaging for me. You know, a lot of 3D installations, a lot of really cool pieces of work that you get to see, and I really love it. Okay, so the third temporary exhibition that I want to share with you all would be Yayoi Kusama, Life is the Heart of a Rainbow, that is organized by National Gallery Singapore once again. And yeah, so this is an exhibition from 2017, and I have had the honor to visit this, which is really interesting. So basically, this exhibition is kind of set up to celebrate the 70 years of artistic obsession by Yayoi Kusama, who's a really famous Japanese artist. And it's really interesting to see her works, which is like, ooh, it's so cool. I think for Yayoi Kusama, she's really famous for her polka dot designs and basically a lot of polka dots in her artworks, which I think is really interesting. Yeah, and for me, right, one of my favorite pieces of work would be this. It's like a room with a lot of like metallic balls all over. And it's really insane because, right, given the context of where National Gallery is in Singapore, it used to be the former Supreme Court and the City Hall. So this very hall that we see right here, right, is actually of really great historical significance. So basically, where our first ever president of Singapore is being sworn in, is also where the Japanese surrendered to the British, right in this hall, during the Japanese occupation back in 1945. And this hall kind of like sees many historical events, and now they use this hall to present Yayoi Kusama's work. So basically, all these giant metallic balls on the ground, I think for me, you know, I feel like artists like this, right, they don't really explain their works in detail. It's really up to the viewer's interpretation and understanding of their work. Okay, so for me, how I view and appreciate this work, right, is that I think of it as like a pre-existing structure, like perhaps a really big, gigantic cube of spheres. But then because over time, due to erosion and things like this, the entire structure collapsed, and all the tiny balls are just like the remains and the ruins of what used to be a massively beautiful structure. Okay, I don't know, for me personally, I feel like I associate it to like the macro scale of things. Like if you think of it on the macro scale, it's like how like, you know, human civilization, our entire existence is built upon social constructs and rules and a lot of very rigid structures. But I think one way how Yayoi Kusama tried to present this work is to show us how fragile and delicate these structures are. You know, like we never know when our entire human society can collapse just like this. You know, like we think about future events like, you know, climate change, and we think about things like the eventual destruction of our planet. And I know we humans also, like if we live our lives without any rules or any guiding principles, we give in to our own primitive desires and instincts. Perhaps we will disintegrate into pieces like this. And yeah, I'm not really sure if this interpretation is correct, but this is just how I perceive this work. Yep. And I think this is the beauty of art, you know, like there's no right and wrong answer to how we view and interpret these works. And I just really love the entire feeling that this work has given me. Another work that I really like, right, is Infinity Mirrored Room, Gleaming Lights of the Souls, which I think is really, really interesting. And it's basically like it's like a mini like cube-like structure where you only get to enter for like a few seconds because of the long queue we all had. So basically we go in and it's just this little cube where all the 6 walls, right, are basically lined with mirrors, and there are a lot of really interesting LED lights with like really colorful rainbow light installations in it. And it's really interesting because I feel like there isn't a specific meaning behind this work, but it just get to it's a very immersive sensory experience that we get to be in, and we get to feel like we're in this room of infinity basically, because of how like the light reflects between the mirrors. It creates this infinity effect where we feel like we're in this endless maze. There are no limits, which I think is really beautiful and really interesting. And the lights kind of like change colors, and it gives all different vibes, different colors of light. There's like red and green, rainbow, or just white crystal clear lights. And I just love this. It's such a beautiful room for us to like contemplate life and think about, the universe, infinity and what goes beyond the horizon. I really love the feeling it invokes in us. And another work that I find very interesting and I really like is actually this replica of Venus de Milo, like this very iconic statue that we all know. And Yayoi Kusama added her own touch to it by adding polka dots on it. And I think this is very interesting because I feel like sometimes art can be quite satirical, like art can be humorous and comical at times. And I kind of find it interesting when artists use their art to like poke fun at certain things, and basically what they're trying to do is to let us not treat art seriously, which is a really interesting mindset that many artists adopt nowadays. So if you were to see Venus de Milo at its original museum, which I think is the Louvre, I think, we see it, we're like, oh, we respect it, she's like the goddess of love and beauty, like Venus. Like back in ancient times, people worship her when they see her statue and things like this. And what Yayoi Kusama did is like she just add polka dots to it and let everyone know, look, this is how I interpret this work, this is how I choose to present this work, and it become hers in a sense. It's like a way of how like we remove the goddess status of this statue and we make it into like a typical piece of art. We just make it into a typical statue and like we get to view it up front, and it's a really fun way to like engage with like really iconic traditional iconic works basically. And yeah, I just really like how Yayoi Kusama as an artist, she is a really funny person, I think, based on how she does her work. She likes to make works that, make you think about things sometimes, but she also like to make works that like make us feel like, ooh, this is actually quite funny. We all like can laugh at this. And yeah, I feel like she's a very interesting person, and I do hope to see more of her works in the future if I get to see them. Okay, so now we're moving on to the permanent exhibitions. And one of my favorite permanent exhibitions of all time will be the exhibition on religious art in Asian Civilizations Museum. So basically, this, I think it's on level 2 of this museum, right? Where they exhibit art from different Southeast Asian religions. So there is this section on Hinduism, on Buddhism, on Islam, on Christian art and things like this, which I think is really interesting. And yeah, maybe I can share with all of you some of my favorite works. One of them has to be this cross, which I think is really interesting. So basically, what I remember is in certain Southeast Asian countries, right, in ancient times, like Christianity is forbidden because it's like a Western religion and things like this. So basically what they do, right, is they added a statue of a Buddha, like they carved the figure of a Buddha on a cross, and they kind of market it as like it's a new way of how I want to worship the Buddha, which is really interesting. I feel like how in ancient times, for people to prevent execution, to prevent themselves from being murdered, and they want to continue to spread their religion, we kind of see all these works where they fuse different religions together, and I think it's very interesting because I've never ever encountered something like this before. And this allows me to think, we get to view these pieces of work up front, you can find interest in it. But back in those days, these are things that they worship, and they created these pieces of work out of fear of their own lives and to spread their religion basically, which I think is a very noble act for me. I think we got to spend some time to appreciate this effort our ancestors have put in to preserve these pieces of art and also to continue spreading their religions. And I think the exhibition on Islamic art is also really beautiful. We get to see different tiles and different structures that we get to see from Islam, and it's just really beautiful. I really love all of the rich blue tones that these pieces of work have. And yeah, I didn't take many photos of the permanent exhibitions, but if you all are interested, you can always visit the place yourself and you get to see a lot of really interesting pieces of art. So for me, I feel like the Buddhist structures are also really nice. All the different Buddhist figures, like the goddess of mercy and all this kind of different deities. I feel like we get to see them and they're all hundreds of years old, which I think is really cool. We get to see all these works up front and personal. I really love it. another one of my favorite permanent exhibitions, right, will have to be National Gallery Singapore. Like just the entire gallery itself is really beautiful. Because National Gallery Singapore is the home to many pieces of Southeast Asian art, and that's the entire like focus that this museum has. And there are a lot of really beautiful pieces that you get to see there. And yeah, I don't think there's much for me to say, but I guess I can share some images with y'all. Yeah, you know, for me, I really have spent all day talking about museums, art pieces, and things like this. Like, you know, I'm gonna be the perfect person when it comes to like explaining how I feel about these kind of artworks, but I hope this video kind of like shed some insight and it allows all of you to see how, personally for me, when I visit a museum, what are some of the ways that I interpret an artwork and how I feel about them. Alright, so I hope this video allows all of you to see the joy and fun we get to have when we go and visit a museum. So yeah, to my friends watching this, you know, like if you're interested to go to a museum, do find me because I really love to go to museums and just talk about artworks with all of you. And yeah, for other viewers, you know, if you have any questions or if you have any specific thoughts you want to share about the artworks you've seen in these videos, do comment down below. If you enjoyed today's video, do give it a like and please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. And yeah, I guess this is a really fun episode for the Cozy Close-Up. I hope all of you get to see my favorite artworks and I'm just so happy to share this with you. So yeah, see you guys in the next episode. Bye!